Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday. And on the menu this week, we have UFO 50. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Mossmouth, UFO 50 released for the PC via Steam in September of 2024. This title is a collection of 50 new retro-inspired titles. Each game in this collection is its own unique, complete game. Some are on the smaller scale as far as more arcadey experience, but each is its own complete game. If you're a fan of retro-inspired games, this is definitely a collection I can recommend you pick up, as there's a lot of awesome here, and especially in the realm of shoot-em-ups. There's quite a few great shoot-em-ups to play through and try. They're all a lot of fun, though some are a fair bit of a challenge. But all the games in the whole collection are definitely worth trying. So with that said, let's have a look at the shoot-em-ups. So if you're looking to sort the titles in the game, there's not a whole lot of menus or tutorials that's telling you what's going on both with the individual games and the whole system itself. If you press up at the top of the screen, you'll bring up a filter. So here we can go past the garden, which this is a neat little segment where you unlock special gifts or additions to this garden from the games, but that aside, you can ultimately start sorting by progress, most played, but most importantly, you can also favorite titles. If you have a particular genre or a certain set of titles you want to keep on coming back to, you can favorite them and find them here. So these are 7 shoot-em-ups that I've picked out from the list of 50 games that I want to highlight. So with all that said, let's dive into the first one, Nyek. Nyek is one of the titles in the collection that has an earlier... Nyek is one of the titles in the collection that has a more retro design philosophy to it. It has the feel of an early Capcom auto-scroller run and gun. You play as a ninja who has the ability to double jump and throw shuriken at the enemies you encounter. It plays 1 or 2 player, but one of the things I think is most fun and unique about it is when you lose lives, you come back as a ghost, temporarily, so you can move around and continue to shoot at enemies. And then when you're finally ready, you can become solid again, as long as you still have lives. The problem is, when you do that, there's no invulnerability frame, so you can potentially take a hit right away, so you do have to be careful with that. In a 2-player game, if you run out of lives entirely, as long as the second player can make it to the point where there's another life balloon that comes up, you can revive the other player. So it's also great for a 1 and 2-player game to play it through that way. Moving along, we have Caramel. This is one of the titles I feel best defines the shoot 'em up genre on this collection. It's a horizontal scroller that plays 1 or 2 players, and this one is definitely challenging. As far as the mechanics, you have a shot that the longer you fire it, you'll build up this charge shot, which releases when you let go of your fire button. There's also this really unique camera mechanic, which basically snaps a Polaroid in front of you, and you can use that Polaroid to both freeze enemies and get double points from them. In addition to that, though, there are all these secrets throughout the course of the game where if you snap a shot in a certain area, you'll get bonus points, as well as just change the way that the stage itself looks. Really cool, but it's a very, very challenging game, so I haven't gotten as far into it as I would like in the time I've had with the title. That said, it is still one that I think is well worth your time to give a try. That's Caramel. Next, we're looking at Overbold, one of the more unique shooters I feel this collection has. So this is an arena shooter with a very interesting push your luck element to it. You're in these pit fights where, based off of completing the fight, you'll earn a certain amount of prize money, which defaults to 100. But you can scale up the difficulty by raising the stakes more and more, adding more enemies and elements to it, but you don't know what kind of enemies you're going to get when you raise the stakes. So that's the push your luck. You use those points and those credits you earn to upgrade yourself, ultimately preparing for the final round, which is extremely difficult and it throws everything the game can possibly throw at you in that round. So this is definitely one of those really challenging, fun ones to take on, and it also has a rather unique two-player element. So the two-player game, rather than be a co-op or even a direct versus, you're playing these stakes where you're basically raising or challenging the other player to more and more difficult arenas, and ultimately whoever quits out forces the next player to take what was built up as far as the difficulty is concerned. It's a really neat back and forth for the two-player, so definitely this is an addictive one where it's like, alright, that run went terrible, but one more run, let's see if I can go and push the stakes just a little bit longer, and I win. That's like, awesome, that was a great run, or this was a terrible run. I've had a lot of fun playing this one, and it's one of the ones I think I'll keep on coming back to ultimately try and complete, though it is going to be quite the challenge to get there, as like I said, that final round that you're preparing for, that one is crazy. That's Overbold. And now we have Starwasar, the other title in the collection I feel is very, very shoot 'em up. So this is your vertical scroller. It only goes and plays one player, but initially you have the choice of choosing between 3 pilots, each with their own unique abilities and types of shots. Then once you get into the game itself, things are rather than the type of gameplay you would have expected from this era, there are some modern sensibilities here. So if you tap your fire button rapidly, you'll get your rapid fire shot and have faster movement. Hold it down and you have a focused movement with a more powerful shot. So that's something that's a little bit more modern than when the title would have in theory been made, but it works really well. Then it has this really unique power-up feature where as you defeat enemies, they'll drop one of 2 power-ups, the E's and G's. So the E's will ultimately, if you collect 3 of those, you'll get your special ability for the particular fighter that you picked. So for one of them, it'll go and say power up your shot. For another, it will give you bombs that you can use against the enemies. Collect 3 G's and you get options. The options will behave differently as well depending on which fighter you picked. But then if there are also some other combinations of the power-ups that will give you different abilities, or maybe like summon the UFO helper from the whole UFO soft logo to help you out, or increase your multiplier. So if you get EGG, egg, then you'll increase your multiplier, and you can keep building on that to get higher and higher scores. This one comes across as very frenetic and difficult, so a lot of your runs are going to be over very quickly, at least until you start to build up some skill in the gameplay itself. But with that said, it's actually very satisfying when you're able to put together a strong run and just keep it going through wave after wave. At this point, I've only actually gotten through about halfway through wave 3, where things do get quite difficult at that point, but once again, this is one that's rewarding the further you're able to push yourself. And where they do have, admittedly they're local leaderboards, but where there are these leaderboards in a lot of these games, that helps drive your desire to play even further. So there you have it. Starwasar is yet another one of those titles that's well worth your time to play in this collection. Now we have the most cute 'em up of the. Now we have the most cute 'em up of the. Now we find ourselves playing the cute 'em up of the collection, Elazar Hat. So this is a 1 or 2 player multi-scrolling top-down run and gun. So you can basically aim in the 8 directions around you. Now we find ourselves to the cute 'em up. Now we find ourselves to the cute 'em up of the collection, Elazar Hat. So this is a really great multi-scrolling top-down run and gun. You have the ability. Now we find ourselves to the cute 'em up of the collection, Elazar Hat. This is a really great multi-scroller that plays 1 or 2 player and has this top-down run and gun perspective. So you have a shot which you can fire in 8 directions around you, and also the ability to dash to help avoid damage. There's also a really awesome card-based mechanic for determining your power-ups, upgrading your characters, and restoring your life. So that's one of the things that I thought was most intriguing about this one. Basically, as you're playing the game, you'll be picking up these items that are cards on the left and right of your screen, and if you have 2 of the same card, you'll upgrade or get that particular power-up or ability. However, if you're able to collect a full set of 3, then you'll get the upgraded version of that particular ability, which is a really awesome, if difficult, feat to pull off. This game really plays great with 2 players, so if you do play this one, I highly encourage you to play it as a 2-player experience, as it just feels like that was the way it was meant to be played. It does have its challenging sections, but this is one of the shoot-'em-ups I feel is more approachable overall, definitely kind of fitting with that more cute-'em-up vibe that this has. With this title in particular, I felt the gameplay was fun and engaging enough that we played this all the way through to completion, which took about 45 minutes or so, kind of giving you an idea of how long some of these games can be if you sit down and play them in one setting. But I felt that way about a lot of the games in this collection, where it's just, man, this is a really awesome game. I want to finish this one, or I'll get back to this one, and I ultimately want to finish it. And that's part of what I feel is the strength of this whole UFO 50 collection. But as far as shoot-'em-ups are concerned, Elazar Hat has definitely been one of my favorite of the whole collection. Now let's shift gears. Now let's shift gears and check out Seaside Drive. So with the title, you might think this is possibly be a racing title, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. So this is another one that's basically a horizontal scroller turret style. You're driving this car along this seaside highway, and throughout the course of that, there's all these enemies that are, well, for whatever reason, trying to attack us. It starts off with these planes and these drones, and just evolves through all sorts of really interesting and weird elements throughout this relatively shorter game, as this one's only 4 stages long, but once again, it's a very satisfying title to sit down and play. It does support 2-player, and the way that 2-player happens in this game is different from the others in the whole collection. So you have one player that's controlling the car, basically going forward, backwards, and dodging all the shots. The other player is controlling the shots, either your front or rear shot, or your main turret cannon, which is what you're going to be using throughout the course of the game. There's also this neat energy mechanic where as you fire, and even if you're not firing, just as long as you're driving, you're burning up this energy, and in order to regenerate that, whoever's driving, if you're playing one player, of course it would just be yourself, but if whoever's handling the car has to drift backwards to rebuild that energy. So if you're trying to dodge through shots, that might be a little bit tricky, but that's part of the fun and the excitement of this game. It also has a really awesome kind of like breakout bonus game that feels really fun to have thrown in there between the stages. This was another one that just sitting down and playing, it's really engaging, and whether you're playing it through in one setting or you end up losing like lives having to go and start again, it's another one of those one more round shoot 'em ups that just feels great to play. So that's Seaside Drive. And now we find ourselves at the last shoot 'em up we're highlighting today, Campanella III. So this title highlights one of the elements I really like about the whole UFO 50 collection. Throughout the course of the games, you see this evolution of game design, and as well as that, sequels, or characters that are reoccurring throughout the whole course of all the different games. It really helps provide this really strong foundation, continuity, and connection to all the games, especially if you start playing them at the earliest and work your way all the way through to the end. So Campanella 1 and 2, for example, aren't shoot 'em ups, though you do have some shooter elements in Campanella 2, and now we find ourselves with Campanella 3, which takes a completely different direction from the others and is a rail shooter. Not only that, this one's a really fun one. So it's a wave-based rail shooter where, for the most part, you have these enemies and objects that are flying towards you, and you have a couple ways to deal with them. You have a forward-facing shot, but if they happen to reach the same plane as you, you also have this side shot, which is a little tricky to use as it fires the opposite direction you're moving. And especially when you've played through 50 different games that have 50 different control schemes, sometimes it can get just a little bit mind-bending. But once you complete through your waves, you've got 3 waves and then a boss that will ultimately show up at the end of the fourth wave. The gameplay here in Campanella 3 is definitely one of the fun ones to just sit back and kind of just like lose yourself in, just like this entire collection. And there you have it. 7 shoot 'em ups from UFO 50 served up for your enjoyment. Really, this collection is a great treat if you're a fan of shoot 'em ups, both the titles that are shoot 'em ups themselves or the ones that have shoot 'em up elements in them. But especially if you're a fan of retro video games in general, UFO 50 is a must play, as I feel this game offers incredible value, really fun, unique ideas the whole way through, and it's just a treat to play. So, UFO 50 comes with a solid recommend from the chef, and with that, we find ourselves at the end of this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, we want to thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.